Just because a game is really good at launch does not mean it's going to be good in 20 years. What is up, everybody? Chaos here. Today we're going to be talking about games with incredible legacies that honestly, they didn't age well. And just to be clear, I'm not saying any of these games are bad or that they didn't deserve the praise they got upon release. Rather, I'm simply saying these games didn't stand the test of time as well as some of their peers did. And even though their contributions to gaming shouldn't be ignored or forgotten, they're probably not going to be very fun to play in the year 2022. So you let me know which legendary game you think aged the most poorest, if that's the right way to say that. Drop a like, make sure you're subscribed, and let's kick it off with a hot take. Super Mario 64? Yeah? It's one of the first fully 3D games ever made, widely seen as one of the most influential games of all time. Now, it was released in '96. It was perfectly translated from the 2D games into a third dimension, taking full advantage of the Nintendo 64's increased horsepower. The level design? It was great. The mechanics were incredibly influential. It basically kickstarted an entirely new genre of platforming games. Plus, there's still people setting world records in the Mario 64 speedrunning community. But when is the last time you actually played this game? Not the emulated version, not the improved version. I'm talking about the original N64 version that came out in '96. It was amazing. It was obviously super important for the industry and history as a whole, but the frame rate, it was super choppy and the movement felt very dated and slightly sluggish. It can be hard to play in 2022. Now, there's plenty of emulated and modded versions available that let you fully appreciate the game design and innovation on display, but the original N64 version, it's a little janky by today's standards, and it doesn't hold up nearly as well as some other games from the late 90s. And before you say it's 20 years old, give it a break. I get that. I do. I just want to talk about games that you go back now and you're like, whoa, that was a little bit rough. Because there's other games that age very well. At number 9, Assassin's Creed. When's the last time you went back and played the original OG Assassin's Creed? Now, I know everybody loved the franchise, and it reinvented itself a million times over, but seriously, the first one, when? It's honestly kind of boring. It had a really cool premise. The presentation was super unique, but it was the sequels that really put this franchise on the map. Assassin's Creed 1? It had some really frustrating gameplay sections, mainly because Ubisoft hadn't really figured out how they were going to do the combat and stealth. Now, the story was good, the world was interesting, just about everything else, though, feels dated and awkward. Thankfully, AC2 refined the formula and turned Assassin's Creed into the beloved franchise that it is now, but AC1 did not age well. Now, you'll know I'm genuine here when I put one of my favorite games on the list. GoldenEye 007. If you know me, you know I love this game. But I have to be honest with myself and you. It will make your eyes bleed. GoldenEye is one of the most important first-person shooters ever made. It is largely responsible for proving that the genre was viable on consoles, as up to this point, shooters were basically exclusive to the PC. Every child of the 80s and 90s has memories of staying up late with their buddies and playing split-screen deathmatch late into the night. But if we're all being honest with each other, the game ran like complete dookie. We played it because it was new, it was exciting, it was unique, and it was addicting. But if you were playing a 4-player deathmatch, it was like watching a PowerPoint at times with how slow the game ran. Now look, it's not like we knew any better, and it's not like there was any other FPS games on the N64 that ran much better, but it's kind of funny to look back at GoldenEye without the nostalgia glasses. I mean, I remember this game looking incredible and playing super smooth, but when I look at videos of how it actually ran, I have to wonder how differently this game would have been received if it came out today. At number 7, Morrowind. This is an instance of a game simply being too detailed for its own good. It was the third game in the Elder Scrolls franchise, and there was a decent amount of people who consider it the best. But when is the last time you booted it up? I mean the original, unmodded version. It's an incredibly dense game, and it was released back in the days when you pretty much had to have the manual with you in order to understand everything. I mean, can you even get your hands on a Morrowind game manual? I don't know. There's a handful of gameplay issues, bugs, bizarre combat mechanics, but the main thing that holds Morrowind back in the modern day is the density. Granted, that's the whole appeal for some people, but even if you love it, you have to admit, if you picked up Morrowind for the very first time in 2022, it would be difficult to get into. Huge learning curve with the game, and even after you put a dozen hours into it, I mean, there's mechanics you're not going to get. With mods and guides, the game is a masterpiece, but on its own, as Bethesda intended, it's rough. At number 6. Gears of War. Now, if you follow video game leaks, you know I've been hyped beyond belief over the possibility of a remastered Gears trilogy. The first 3 Gears of War games are some of the best third-person shooters ever made, but they didn't play well. Now, the two sequels can maintain a decent frame rate, but Gears 1 is almost unplayable by modern standards. The visuals, they honestly hold up pretty well. The level design is good, but this game really does not perform well, and there's certain sections where the frame rate can drop below 20 for a long stretch of time. I adored Gears of War 1 back in the day, and I still think it's a masterfully designed game, but it's very clear that Epic Games were pushing their engine to the limit. Now, if you want to play Gears 1, get the Ultimate Edition remake from 2015 or wait for the inevitable remastered trilogy to drop. It's one of the most influential shooters of all time, but if you boot up the original 360 version, it's rough. At number 5, Mortal Kombat 4 through 9. Might piss some people off here, but I'm going to put my foot down. Mortal Kombat started out strong, and then it was terrible until NetherRealms took over. The first 3 arcade games, great. Home console ports, solid. But once the series went 3D, it all fell apart. MK4 is a mess by modern standards. Deadly Alliance has some really weird gameplay falls. Deception and Armageddon are basically interchangeable minus the fatality system. And the less we talk about MK versus DC Universe, the better. The 2011 reboot of Mortal Kombat was really where the record was set straight, and I can confidently say that every NetherRealms MK game has aged well. So, sure, some of them are better than others, but all of them still feel great to play and they have their own appeal. The same cannot be said about the original 3 games, right? I mean, from the years 1997 to 2010, it was rough. You still find people playing the classic Mortal Kombat trilogy, and you still find people talking about how good MKX was, but you will never ever find anybody reminiscing about Mortal Kombat 4 or Mortal Kombat Armageddon. That's an era of MK that's pretty much been forgotten. At number 4, Street Fighter 2. I've praised this game countless times on the channel, and I don't take any of it back. It's a one-on-one fighter that's largely considered the first true fighting game ever made, and if you like fighting game genre, you owe it to Street Fighter 2. However, what gets it on the list is the number of issues with the OG version that were actually fixed with later releases. So in case you didn't know, let me help you out. Capcom re-released Street Fighter 2 4 different times with various changes to the gameplay, the character roster, everything, in order to make it more balanced and varied. There was the original Street Fighter 2, then there was Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, which is a version most of you probably played, then there was Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and then there was Super Street Fighter 2, and finally, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. 5 versions, not 4. The original release had a lot of problems. You weren't expecting them. There was some blatant balancing problems. Some of the hitboxes and movesets are janky. Granted, it was the first game of its kind, and there was bound to be issues, but it's pretty weird to go back and play the OG version of Street Fighter 2 after playing all the different other variants and re-releases. Capcom struck gold with Street Fighter 2, and the fighting game genre is forever in their debt, but playing the original version, it can be pretty jarring. At number 3, Metroid. Now, this franchise is one of the most important in gaming history. There's a reason everybody remembers Super Metroid as the one that made it big instead of the original. The first Metroid, it was the first game in the Metroidvania genre, obviously, and if you're a fan of games like that, you know it involves a lot of exploration and backtracking while unlocking new abilities and knowledge of the world. Who remembers Justin Bailey with all underscores? But the original Metroid can be incredibly frustrating due to the complete lack of direction. I know it was the first game in the series, so I know there was going to be some hiccups, but it was a frustrating game to play. There was no information given to the player, and there was a ton of backtracking you had to do in order to make any progress. Super Metroid, they refined the formula, made things more digestible, but the original Metroid, it felt very maze-like, and that's going to push a lot of people away from it. Now, there was the remake in 2004 called Metroid Zero Mission, which is a much better experience, in my opinion. At number 2, Resident Evil 1. Let me be the first to say, the OG Resident Evil simply is not scary today. There's some old school horror games like Silent Hill 2 and even a Resident Evil 2 that could spook you out in 2022, but the OG one, no. Despite terrifying us back in the 90s, it's honestly hilarious now. The graphics are blocky and ineffective, but what really kills it is the voice acting. The voice acting in the original Resident Evil is so bad that it destroys any possible scariness you would experience. There have been 1 or 2 remakes, that make it much scarier. Those versions hold up well, but if you play the original 1996 Resident Evil, you're probably going to laugh out loud. And at number 1 today, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I know, bring on the dislikes. It's not like YouTube will let you see the dislikes anyway, so go for it. Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64 are extremely similar. They both were N64 exclusives. They both brought a previous 2D franchise into the third dimension. From a game design standpoint, it's undeniably one of the best games ever made, no question. But the game has been spoiled with a number of re-releases, remasters, remakes that keep it looking as pretty as possible. When's the last time you played the original 1998 version? If you were to pull up a slideshow on your computer right now, press the next slide button as fast as you can, the image would probably be smoother than the original version of this game. Now again, for the millionth time in this video, I'm not hating on it because this was the 90s and Nintendo was pushing gaming hardware to its limit, but it's funny to look back at the game that turned the world on its head. Ocarina of Time features an amazing story, great gameplay, level design, soundtrack, but if you go play it in 2022, either pick up one of the remasters or emulate it on PC. The original, it's rough. And there you have it. Those are legendary games that did not age well. Let me know one that didn't make the list, and I'll see you guys soon.